Let's get to Tim Walz, who, just when you think no one's sitting at this table, neither she nor the big white blanket, can embarrass themselves any further, he does. She asks him, to her credit, about the carrying the weapons in war, which we know is a lie. He never served in war. He's been stealing valor for quite some time.
Tim Walz has spent years basking in the glow of so-called Minnesota nice, selling himself as the smiling, handshake-ready governor with a polished, down-home persona. But the second Megyn Kelly locks him in her crosshairs, that cheerful mask cracks wide open. In an instant, the glossy image is stripped away, exposing a politician whose charm can't cover the contradictions, the missteps, and the raw opportunism simmering underneath.
Walz is also out on the new media tour and trying to help her when he's not defending his comments on the Electoral College. And he sits down with Michael Strahan, who's the best thing ABC has going. And Strahan actually asks him about his many, many lies. There's a much longer list than actually came up, but he did raise it to his credit. Here's how that went.
Walz has spent years packaging himself as the everyman governor, the corn-fed Midwestern dad who just happens to hold the keys to the state house. He milks that Minnesota nice image for all it's worth, the type you'd expect to show up at a church potluck carrying a casserole in one hand and a football story in the other. But the second Megyn Kelly takes aim, that picture-perfect act collapses faster than a bargain lawn chair caught in a hurricane.
You said that you carried weapons in war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country. Equally proud of my service in a public school classroom, whether it's Congress or the governor. My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about our children being shot in schools.
If you are enjoying this takedown, please hit that subscribe button. Now, Kelly doesn't just laugh off the contradictions. She blasts them apart like a floodlight, catching a raccoon creeping through the backyard. Walz loves to parade himself as the steady hand of the Midwest, but in truth, he looks more like a man juggling policies, tossing promises to one crowd while whispering the opposite to another. And Kelly isn't buying the Minnesota nice routine for a second. To her, Walz isn't a leader at all. He's the human equivalent of bland wallpaper, there, but forgettable.
Some statements that just aren't true. And the comment about weapons of war that I carried in war, which you didn't. You said that you were in Hong Kong during the Tiananmen Square massacre when you weren't. You kind of chalked it all up to bad grammar or getting the dates wrong. Yeah. But your opponents say you lied to make yourself look better. Do they have a point?
Well, look, 35 years ago, got the opportunity to be in Hong Kong, be in China, learned a lot about it, served 24 years in the National Guard, passionately, in an instance, talking about gun violence in schools.
The flaw in Walz's leadership is that it survives only by pretending problems don't exist, at least not until they smack him square in the face. Crime spikes, he shrugs and mumbles some vague line about community values. Schools collapse, he pops into a classroom for a staged photo op, nodding like a spectator, as if one plastic smile could magically solve everything. Then, just like that, he disappears. The issues stay, the solutions never come, and real results are about as rare as a Minnesota summer that lasts more than 2 weeks.
The fallout continues for Tim Walz on the disastrous performance he delivered, in particular when it comes to his self-described knuckle-headed behavior, which was just his latest in a series of lies. The reason he resorted to, "I'm a knucklehead," was he got confronted with his latest lie.
But it's not just the hollow speeches Kelly tears apart, it's the contradictions that practically expose themselves. Walz struts around as the so-called defender of small-town values, yet his policies often read like they were lifted straight from the rulebooks of big city bureaucrats. One moment, he's thundering about freedom and responsibility, and in the next, he's applauding government overreach as long as it props up his political friends. Kelly rips that mask away, exposing the routine for exactly what it is. Walz isn't a steady hand. He's a political chameleon, shifting colors and blending in depending on who's watching.
I think people know me. They know who I am. They know where my heart is. And again, my record has been out there for over 40 years to speak for itself.
And the idea that you said that you were in war.
Yeah.
Did you misspeak, as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar's not always correct. But again, if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me, or it's an attack on my dog.
This took chutzpah. Let's go through it. You said you carried weapons in war, but you've never deployed in a war zone. A campaign official of yours said you misspoke. Did you? Well, I'm proud, incredibly proud of my record.
What really ignites the takedown is when Kelly zeroes in on Walz's crisis management, or lack of it. The pandemic turned his governorship into a full-scale stress test, and the cracks split wide open. One moment he played the role of public safety guardian, tossing out mandates like Halloween candy. The next he stumbled through mixed messages that left Minnesotans more baffled than informed. Kelly drives home the truth. Calm doesn't equal competent. On or off camera, Walz's leadership was as messy as a garage sale in a downpour. Rules shifted by the day, priorities flipped overnight, and his excuses sounded less like strategy and more like a teenager scrambling to explain late homework. Minnesotans didn't get leadership, they got chaos neatly wrapped in a polite Midwestern accent.
That's been unearthed. There's a long list of them. This one was that he was in China when the Tiananmen Square disaster unfolded, when hundreds of people were killed. You know whether you were in a place where hundreds of people are being massacred by their government when it happens. But he continues to try to say, like, oh, gee, I was just kind of confused. You know, that happened in May and I was there in August, but I guess I just imagined that I was there, whatever. So he got asked about that debate moment where he completely melted down.
Next comes Walz's stance on policing and public safety, where the contradictions stack higher than snow in January. He talks tough when the cameras are rolling, bragging about standing with law enforcement. But the second progressive activists raise their voices, he folds like a paper plate at a barbecue. Kelly makes it clear his so-called leadership during social unrest wasn't leadership at all. It was political hide and seek. He let chaos simmer, hoping passivity would pass for compassion. But compassion doesn't end riots, and empathy doesn't bring back order. Kelly skewers him for trying to please everyone and ultimately enraging everyone instead. The roast cuts deeper when she compares his governing style to a Minnesota winter, long, dragging, and filled with promises that spring is just around the corner, even though spring never shows up when people need it most. Kelly also dismantles the myth that Walz is relatable. Sure, he sprinkles in stories about growing up in rural Nebraska or teaching high school, but those anecdotes don't erase reality. Today, he's no everyman. He's a polished career politician. His down-home persona isn't authenticity. It's political cosplay.
Well, they're comparing this moment by Tim Walz to that because he looked so inept and like a faker. Like he didn't belong there and he was trying to convince us of something that wasn't real as he decided to go pheasant hunting. And Charlie, you're a gun guy. You tell me whether this looked authentic to you. Here he is.
That's my theory.
And it never fits quite right.
Never fits quite right. Just not quite right. How do you give it back?
Governor, what kind of gun is it?
This is a Beretta A400.
Kelly shreds the fantasy that Walz is still just one of us. The truth, he's been sealed inside the political bubble for so long, the only small town he remembers is the one his consultants script into his speeches. And then comes his economic record, which Kelly slices apart without mercy. Walz loves to dress up his fiscal policies as steady stewardship, but under his watch, Minnesota has resembled one long experiment in how fast taxpayers can roll their eyes. High taxes, check bloated budgets, double check, and somehow, with all that spending, essential services still fall behind. It's the political equivalent of buying every kitchen gadget in the store, yet still failing to cook a single edible meal. Walz's gaze is locked on bigger stages, but Kelly doesn't just laugh at the thought, she obliterates it. If he can't run one state without drowning in contradictions and confusion, what chance does he have on the national stage? It's like the guy who can't keep a lemonade stand afloat suddenly thinking he's ready to run Starbucks. Ambition without competence isn't vision, it's delusion. And Kelly rips Walz apart as the politician who confuses photo ops for leadership and applause for results.
Doing this. Equally proud of my service in the classroom. Did I mention I was a teacher and a coach, an assistant coach? Okay, whatever. But he's more stolen valor. In the classroom, I'm in the classroom. My record speaks for itself. It doesn't, actually. You've put a lot of lies into that record that you've been called out on by service personnel. You must clarify, as your campaign had tried to do, And now you appear to be distancing yourself from that clarification. And then here's, two pieces of this that are really, I speak like they do. People are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about, and then he goes on to blame it on the school shootings. I guess he was upset about school shootings, so he lied. But stop saying you speak.
Kelly takes it even further, tearing down the illusion of Walz as some great unifier. His defenders love to brag that he brings people together, but Kelly flips that claim upside down. The only unity Walz inspires is when people across the political spectrum roll their eyes in perfect sync during his speeches. Democrats call him too cautious. Republicans call him too reckless. Independents see a man who couldn't make a decisive move if his career depended on it. The unifier label isn't a compliment, it's a punchline. Walz has managed to unite people only in collective disappointment, and in today's political climate, mediocrity isn't harmless. It's dangerous, because when leaders coast on charm and dodge real decisions, the fallout hits everyone else. Kelly's takedown smashes the Minnesota nice facade to dust, showing Walz isn't the steady hand his fans brag about. He's the empty glove left behind when the image collapses.
Political environment.
And Vice President Harris said that she told you to be a little bit more careful on how you say things.
Well, I did it, even the other day of just speaking passionately about these gun violence situations and meeting with these survivors. I wear my emotions on my sleeve, and I do think in these positions, whether it be governor or being vice president of the United States, you do need to be careful. You do need to be a little more thoughtful on it.
Okay, guys, I will submit to you that the American people are not dumb. And I would submit to you that the American people will look over "I'm friends with school shooters," which he said in that vice presidential debate, as him misspeaking. Everyone will give him that grace. But it's not going to work on this litany of other lies, because you don't misspeak over and over.
Walz has perfected one political trick, surviving criticism by looking pleasant while failing upward. And Kelly makes sure the audience sees it with ruthless clarity. Behind every folksy grin and every soft-spoken answer lies a career built not on vision, but on avoidance. Walz may have thought his smile was armor, but Kelly turned it into a bullseye, and she never missed. His entire playbook banks on the public's short memory. He counts on people forgetting, moving on, or simply not caring enough to dig deeper. As long as he keeps flashing that grin and recycling his tired slogans, he believes voters will hand him the benefit of the doubt. But for all his speeches about accountability and transparency, Walz's administration has earned a reputation for being allergic to scrutiny. The moment tough questions land, answers vanish, buried in bureaucracy, drowned in talking points, or delayed until the outrage fades away. Kelly calls it exactly what it is, not leadership, but a shell game built to disguise incompetence as strategy. It's the political version of slapping white paint over water damage and praying no one notices the cracks spreading beneath.
On Wednesday in Pennsylvania, and here's how he handled it.
I have my dates wrong. I was in Hong Kong and China in 1989. That move from Hong Kong into China, it was profound for me. That was the summer of democracy. I said it's where I understood how sacred democracy was. It's what encouraged me, about 15 back and forth with my students, taking them to China. I speak like everybody else speaks. I need to be clear, I will tell you that. But here's my whole point on that thing with China. I do understand China a hell of a lot better than Donald Trump. Kamala Harris understands.
Those cracks split even wider when education enters the picture. Walz loves to crown himself as the champion of Minnesota's future, yet the numbers tell a brutal story. Reading and math scores have cratered, classrooms are crumbling, and his so-called fixes amount to shoveling more money into a system with zero demand for accountability or real results. Kelly zeroes in on the hypocrisy. Walz promises every child opportunity, but what parents actually see is frustration. Teachers see burnout, students see themselves slipping further behind the rest of the nation. Walz can wave the equity banner all day, but equity without results is nothing more than expensive window dressing. And then comes the economy, the area Walz claims as his strength. He brags about building opportunity, but for many Minnesotans, it feels like treading water while being taxed into exhaustion. Kelly slices straight through the spin, exposing Walz as a man who doesn't deliver outcomes. He delivers optics, dressed up and sold as progress.
On an instance there, proud of the service that I've done, proud to be a teacher in that classroom, proud to have been very public all these years and owning it when I, said, look, I was there in August of '89. And I think the policies, whether it be dealing with China and understanding China's human rights record, what you can be certain there is that Kamala Harris and I aren't going to, pick dictators on speed dial.
Well, but it's one of the things with trust. So there are going to be some people who say, we can't trust him even tell the truth about himself.
Yeah.
What do you say to them?
Well, I said they know who I am. I know who I am. I know the work that I've done. I know that things get spun in a political environment.
The harshest blows land when Kelly exposes Walz's true pattern, not leading, but trailing. He's mastered the art of waiting to see which way the wind blows, then sprinting to the front and calling it courage. During the George Floyd protests, that weakness was on full display. Minnesota was in chaos, and Walz spent weeks floundering, trapped between activists demanding sweeping change and citizens pleading for safety. The result? He satisfied no one. Too soft for some, too heavy-handed for others. Kelly doesn't sugarcoat it. She calls it what it really is: indecision disguised as balance. Schools stayed shuttered longer than necessary. Businesses collapsed under endless restrictions. Mental health spiraled out of control. And through it all, Walz clung to caution, refusing to act until political pressure shoved him into a corner. Kelly paints him not as a leader with vision, but as a governor ruled by fear, leaving everyday families to sweep up the wreckage he caused.